I've seen even experienced game masters resort to railroading at the gaming table. Hell, I know I've been guilty of it myself, and on multiple occasions. But why would any GM stoop that low when pretty much the one thing that everyone in this hobby agrees upon is that railroading is bad? Contrary to what some might say, I don't think it's because these GMs are all crazy control freaks who want to rob players of their agency and make them puppets in a predetermined storyline. I actually believe that 90% of railroading is born of good intentions. The GM has planned an epic scenario and they want it to play out in the most exciting way possible. But if the terrifying monster is banished in round one, or the players are able to steal the MacGuffin with a lucky roll, or using Pass Wall or Wild Shape, the rest of the session will be far too easy and devoid of all that important drama that makes for great D&D, or whichever RPG you happen to be playing. So the reason why GMs fall into the railroading trap is actually because they want their players to have more fun. But the obstacles they design for the session turn out to be too easily circumnavigated, and so the GM ends up fudging dice or making biased rulings in order for the scene to play out more like they had in their mind when they were planning the session. In doing so, however, these GMs negate the consequences of player decisions, leaving them feeling cheated and breaking their immersion in the game world. Before I go on with some tips on how to avoid this trap, I think we can actually count 3 distinct forms of railroading, only 2 of which are truly offensive, at least in my opinion. So type 1 is railroading the storyline. This essentially means railroading an entire adventure, pushing the players down the tracks of a storyline where they have few to no choices to make. The ability to make meaningful choices is crucial to the experience of playing a role-playing game. So this is something GMs absolutely need to avoid in order to offer a true RPG experience. This, of course, is the worst type of railroading and the topic of many articles, comments, and videos. But to be honest, I think with all the great advice out there these days, this extreme form of railroading doesn't happen too much in present times. So moving on to type 2, I call this railroading the direction of travel. So this second form of railroading involves pushing the players in the direction of an adventure without giving them the agency to accept the quest or go their own way. And this is particularly common in one-shot games, for example, or games that start in media res, where you've already accepted the quest, or rather, the GM accepted the quest on your behalf. For me, this is a perfectly acceptable modus operandi. Players sign up for a game session in order to go on an adventure, so they shouldn't need too much carrot or stick to engage with the material that the GM spent hours preparing. Players absolutely want the agency of deciding how they deal with situations that come up in the game, but they generally don't mind being railroaded into those dramatic situations to begin with. That's why they came to the table. Type 3 railroading is railroading specific outcomes. This is the most common type of railroading, I believe, and it involves forcing certain results or outcomes, usually by fudging dice rolls or making biased rulings or artificially removing player choice. It's a bit similar to type 1 railroading, but it's worth making the distinction because, as I say, railroading entire adventures rarely happens, in my opinion, these days, perhaps beyond a GM's first rodeo. However, railroading results is a much more common occurrence and something even experienced DMs need to guard against, as it can really damage the integrity of your game and make players feel that their choices and actions don't matter. Okay, so without further ado, here are my tips on how to avoid this trap. Tip number 1, let go of your vision. You may have had an idea for how a certain scene will unfold, and you may even have grown quite attached to that idea. You no doubt believe that the session will be way more epic if this or that happens, but you shouldn't force it. Breaking immersion by shutting down player agency is much more damaging to your game than allowing the players to score an easy victory, even if the latter feels lacking in drama. Players still tend to enjoy easy victories and the feeling of being powerful, So you don't need to feel bad when everything goes their way and the session feels a bit too easy. Just be prepared to move on to the next part of the story. Tip number 2, roll your dice in the open. If you roll your dice in front of your players, A, you'll never be tempted to fudge a roll because you can't, and B, you're openly demonstrating that you are a truly impartial referee. Railroading results can actually be done in both directions. While fudging a boss's saving throw is one temptation, GMs are probably more often guilty of manipulating the dice to save a player from death. Rolling in the open removes both these temptations and makes the game world very real and uncaring, which is great for immersion. Tip 3, be sure to provide choices. Always check the scenario you've prepared provides players with choices to make along the way. These choices need to be A, informed choices based on game world information that is available to them, and B, meaningful as well, because those choices carry consequences. Often the best way to provide choices is to create a tricky objective without a single solution, but with several obstacles that stand in the player's way. This gives the players the agency of how to go about their job. Tip 4, play your monsters smart. Don't only prepare the monsters' stat blocks, think in advance about how they might react to certain situations, including the situation where the players get the upper hand early on in a fight. If you overestimated your monster's combat threat, you might have them run away to fetch reinforcements, for example. Or maybe some smart thinking on the monster's part can still keep the tensions high as they blow up a bridge or threaten to kill a hostage. Tip 5, check the wording of game-changing spells. Sometimes a player wheels out a spell that trivializes an encounter or an obstacle, but never take the player's word for what the spell does. Many spells have restrictions baked into the small print, or perhaps they require an expensive component, or they have a longer casting time, or require concentration. So be sure to read the spell description yourself and check if it really solves the situation in the way the players think it does. And if a player pulls a trick like casting Arcane Eye outside a dungeon, then you can always make a Wandering Monster check. Which brings me to tip 6. Tip 6 is have a Wandering Monster table ready. If players circumvent an obstacle but then end up hanging around in a dangerous area like outside a dungeon or taking a shortcut through the wilderness, it's a good idea to have them roll on a Wandering Monsters table. You're never too far away from danger in the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons, and avoiding one danger, which the GM prepared, often means dicing with another potential threat. Tip 7, prepare the next section of the adventure. If the players score an easy win, then often it's simply time to move to the next part of the adventure and the next big decisions and major obstacles the party face. And if you don't have the next part ready yet, check my next tip. Tip 8, run campfire tales. So your players just circumvented or blasted through your entire session prep. Time to punish them with some obligatory role-playing instead. Running campfire tales is as easy as having a few conversational prompts ready and then encouraging your players to answer them in character. It's a great way for the players to share some of their characters' motivations and backstories and demonstrate their personalities, and such scenes often provide a good change of pace to combat-heavy sessions. Plus, once you put your players through this a few times, they'll gladly walk into the next ambush, I promise you. Okay, time for tip 9, my final tip. Have some extraordinary locations on hand in case you need them. If what you had planned for a D&D session goes awry, or the players go off in a different direction than you anticipated, it can be handy to have some modular locations you can drop into your game, opening up a new area of the map, or else presenting them totally off-grid, but with a good hook to visit. Okay, so as you might have guessed, this particular anti-railroad tip is a shameless segue into some big news. My book of extraordinary locations recently won an ENNIE nomination for Best Supplement 2026. For those of you who don't know, the ENNIEs are the most prestigious accolade available to RPG designers, so I'm absolutely delighted. to have won this nomination from the judges for my first published book in print. There's actually 30 map locations here, and they don't come with a prescribed storyline attached. Instead, they're kind of situations waiting to unfold at the table. And for each one, I've provided 4 to 5 adventure ideas so that you can easily integrate these locations into your campaigns. So the idea is that they're a really versatile tool. The adventure ideas here. So yeah, having some modular content that's already prepped for you with a map can be quite a handy tool for when you need some stand-in drama and you just want to drop something in quickly on the fly when the obstacles you prepared for a session got absolutely blasted away by your players' ingenuity or some lucky dice rolls. Okay, I think that's all you need to hear from me. I do go into this topic in a little more detail on my blog. I'll stick a link in the description. And you can also find a link with a bit more information about my book and some of the screenshots of the 30 maps included in the product. Please do share your own thoughts in the comments, along with any railroad horror stories that you may have unfortunately experienced, or any tips you use to ensure players always have agency at your table and that you create this credible world where decisions matter and those decisions have very real consequences. Okay, that's it from me. Until the next time, let's keep rolling.